I am calling this February 13th, 2023 regular meeting of the Mancos RE6 School Board to order. The time is 6:03. Would everyone please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd like to thank everybody for being here, Tico, and all the board members. Thank you for taking seriously your duties, and Todd and Heather. We appreciate you. There's 2 times for participation. One is at the beginning. Did we have somebody sign up? We did. Okay. When I get there.
You do roll call.
So roll call, please.
Pam Coppinger,
Here.
Victor Figueroa,
Aye.
David Cahill, here, Emily Hexton Brown,
Here.
Present.
Okay, we have a quorum with 5 members. Approval of the agenda.
I move that we approve the agenda with the addition of a discussion item G for a policy review schedule that's been presented to the board, and add action item F, a draft of board and school goals.
make a second.
Okay, I have a first and a second, sorry. To approve the agenda with the amends of under discussion items G, schedule for the policy review, and action items F to adopt the policy, the superintendent, the draft of the superintendent's goals. Noting that we're going to be meeting with staff to get their input. Okay, any other discussion? Okay, Heather, will you call a question, please?
Katie Cahill,
Aye.
Pam Coppinger,
Aye.
Victor Figueroa,
Aye.
Tim Hunter,
Aye.
Emily Hexton Brown. Aye.
Okay, motion passes 5-0. Okay, minutes from our last meeting.
I make a motion to approve the minutes of the January 23rd regular meeting.
I second.
Okay, I've got a motion and a second to approve the minutes of the January 23rd, 2023 regular meeting. Any discussion? All right, Heather, call a question, please.
Katie Cahill,
Aye.
Pam Coppinger,
Aye.
Victor Figueroa,
Aye.
Tim Hunter,
Aye.
Emily Hexton Brown.
Aye. Okay, motion passes 5-0. Public participation, Tico. You have 3 minutes.
This is not me as Dak. I just want to clarify that for y'all in the public. This is me. This is me. I want to reiterate something Todd said in the work session, and that the work you're doing is a beautiful thing. And I
The what?
appreciate the work you're doing is a beautiful thing, and I appreciate your effort and what you're doing. Before Victor said this in a work session, I've been written it down since last week. But I appreciate Victor pointing out wanting to get more staff input. And so just a simple thing that I wonder if it could be useful somehow is to somehow, not just for what you're looking at now, but for staff as a whole, how they're feeling, somehow create a way for staff to be able to put, do an anonymous survey, simply of like, what's the culture like? How are we feeling this month? Or anything like that. And even potentially the community, how is the community seeing the school district? The reason I say that is, as I come to the board meeting as much as I can, I often hear different narratives sometimes than what I feel like is the full staff. And it may just be a small bit of staff that I'm hearing, but again, I don't ever hear that here at the board meeting, so I wonder if it's been known. So just a survey for staff and community. And the other thing I am wondering about is trainings for staff and how, I think I heard this at the last work session, how important are we making trainings? Is every staff member getting the training they need? I remember when I came to the school district, I did not have a training day. I came mid-year. That kind of makes sense, but it also doesn't make sense. Like, I should still have all the training I need to be a teacher. And I've heard that from other current staff that have come on recently, that their training isn't as full as it should be. And so I've heard y'all talk about PBL, I've heard you talk about trauma informed, and how are you wanting to be more robust about that, but even the smaller stuff, I think it is getting missed sometimes with all the staff. And so I asked the board to see if that's getting done properly. One big training that I don't know is in the district that has been in the past is the threat assessment and management protocol. If someone has been trained on that in the school district, are they still in the school district? And just curious if anyone knows that at some point. So that's me as DO Cruz.
Thank you.
Do you want to call out that goal?
Do what?
Do you want to call out that goal?
Oh, yeah, yeah, you're one with our, we already have a survey with community in our goals.
And staff, it's
And
already
staff.
in the goals.
So it's already in there.
And it's actually noted anonymous if possible.
Yeah.
So almost a word for word almost is already rolled into that document we were talking about earlier. But I love the threat assessment feedback. Yeah, that's really good. And the training. of course.
Okay, sorry, I got it right. All right, district accountability, different hat.
Different hat. This is DO Cruz for district accountability. We had, we met a few weeks ago, and we had the compensation report PowerPoint given to us, and we really appreciated that. And there was a lot of good information and discussion talked about that at our meeting. This last meeting was, I think, the most robust talking that has happened since I've been there. So it was a really good meeting, and out of that has come 4 recommendations.
No.
To start off with, I should have numbered these in words. We recommend that the school board inform the DAC of pertinent future topics and agenda items so that we can be well informed, so that we can make appropriate recommendations in the future. So knowing beforehand of what's happening before you make a decision on it.
In all arenas.
In all arenas.
Okay.
Like pertinent, that can be helpful. It
Okay.
would be good to have that information.
For example, tonight, we just spoke about the policy review.
For
Okay.
example, second example, recommendation number 2, that when the time comes that the DAC will be informed about pertinent information and discussion when pertaining to an SRO. And so that's just one example of that previous recommendation. Third, we recommend that from the actual presentation that was given to us, that the school board pursue any or all valid, no-cost internal procedures from the compensation report PowerPoint. So one part of that PowerPoint, one part of that compensation report was about no-cost and internal procedures that can just change to make things better. So we are recommending that you pursue anything that could be valid in that PowerPoint as soon as you can. And fourth, we recommend that the different pathways that have been created are somehow being trickled down to the lower grades, so that pathways in PBL is becoming one full PK-12 within the district. So somehow that pathway work, what's going on, what's being taught, can be trickled down to as low as we can on different arenas. So there's your 4 recommendations.
I love that last one.
Okay, I would say one thing on the number 2 with your SRO.
Yep.
If you go on the CASB website and get under the legislation and the laws, there's been, I think, 2 bills introduced on SROs, and it has to do with their training, because it's way different than a policeman and what their requirements, what they're asking for, and that it is likely to pass. It's very controversial right now at the Capitol, but do some research on that, and I'd encourage you to talk about that with your committee too, so.
We did have a recommendation to put the, trying to look for the wording that I put down, a link on the school website about the bill tracker.
We did.
But I looked before this meeting and it is on there. So I didn't make that recommendation, so.
Ding, ding, ding.
So,
Todd.
so yes, we know that's there and we appreciate that.
Yeah,
being there.
So that will help, because that would also give you what the state's looking at.
Yeah.
So, and what we would have to do in order, if we were ever to get one, what we're gonna have to go through to get one, so.
And another aspect of like that bill tracker, where that recommendation,
comes-
another place came from is last month.
Right,
And
and I would encourage you to email, text, they really like text anyway, the representatives and the senators that signed on to that bill, and give them your feedback.
And I think part of that ask is that if there are bills that y'all are seeing that are important, let us know. And if you're welcome to our recommendation about those bills that you're wondering about, we would love to make those recommendations.
So would it be odd for us when we kind of come to the end of this meeting, is this appropriate for me to ask questions? But like to the end of the meeting, like the agenda items, future agenda items that we think about feedback that we can give to DAC, like maybe like, okay, we're coming this, this is the place that we would need that kind of feedback from DAC.
I'm wondering, I
I'm
know we get the agenda out, the week before.
Yeah.
Should we be copying
Should
the
we be
DAC
copying
president?
the DAC president on that,
Mhm.
on the agenda? What do you think, Todd?
You have a
I mean, that would give
schedule of conversations that you're having with DAC.
Mhm. But I'm sure there's conversation outside of that schedule. That's how it's always occurred.
Yeah,
I don't think that sharing the agenda, I think that would be great, but how the rolling schedule applies but it might even be, the way I thought about it was, if you could just share that with your DAC members, it may encourage some of your DAC membership to attend, much like you do at every board meeting, and be able to be present for the conversation.
DAC is typically a week after the board meeting.
Right,
yeah.
And the
Time
board
frame.
agenda isn't really,
it's a week before the
Yeah.
board meeting.
right.
Yeah,
But that's the benefit I see is their attendance based on the agenda,
Mhm.
or questions at DAC based on the agenda if they weren't able to view the meeting remotely.
would that be beneficial to, you take information back to the committee, correct?
I do.
Okay, would that be beneficial to them to have that, to know that, would that lead to talking points at your next meeting? I know you're
I
fixed
would.
with topics.
I would prefer to ask them before I answer that question. And how I'm seeing things work. I don't know how, from what I've heard from them, I don't know how helpful it would be. Their concern is that, our concern is that we're finding stuff out after the decisions are being made. And so then if you've made the decision, we can make a recommendation, but the decision's made, so
Yeah.
our recommendation is void. And so that's where it's like, knowing information prior to the decisions being made is how we can make appropriate and meaningful recommendations to the board.
You need to change your meeting the week before.
Well, I think I have a plan to look at next year. maybe
Shifting it around.
Shifting some
Yeah,
stuff. but,
it just seems like that would be the natural thing to help that.
Yeah,
Yeah, so Tito, I do owe you a list of other DAC presidents. I did ask Sherry Noyce who is the BOCES president, as well as Royce Trinan, who's the ED, but I didn't get a response, so I will bring that up at our meeting. And it is something that I did talk to Royce about, is like general information sharing between districts. And BOCES seems, while it's kind of outside the purview of our policies, it's kind of a natural already, to be honest with you, because it's the only place that local board members get together on a regular basis. So I will again ask in front of the whole group this forthcoming Wednesday.
And to piggyback on one of your recommendations, specifically related to being aware of all discussions surrounding SRO, the next board linkage meeting is February 22nd with the town. And we can make a good assumption that conversation there will be conversations surrounding an SRO. And that will be attended by Mr. Cordray, myself, and Travis Greenlee. And therefore, you might want to share that information out to DAC, as that's only it's next week, basically. So
What day is that?
it is on the 22nd, so it's a Wednesday.
Yeah, after our meeting, perfect.
It'll be Wednesday, but I do believe it starts at 6. So you might want to adjust your meeting.
Okay, perfect.
So what did we decide on, keep trying to get information back to DAC so they can give us some feedback on topics? Did we come up with a way to do that?
Now the schedule's not working out. Number one,
Yeah.
next year, we can kind of fix that, but it would be easier for them to have their meeting before ours,
Mhm.
so.
Well,
so
we
they
do-
can- Yeah, they'd have the agenda, and they could come up and, and put some, I don't know, how do we distill recommendations, because that takes time and conversation. Come up with your recommendations.
I think it takes just foresight of what are important topics that are gonna be done and simply informing the DAC. Simply informing them of like, these topics are coming up so that at least we know and can do our own research, even if the research hasn't been done. But just the knowledge of certain topics coming up.
Well, and at one level, DAC is a review board, not necessarily a
It
recommendation.
is a recommendation board. If you look through DAC. One of our,
Charge from the state.
charges, thank you, is an advisory committee that makes recommendations to the Board of Education.
Right, but it's after review of what the board is doing.
That's not clarified within,
I think you.
I'll look, I won't say that before I say it, I'll look at that.
I don't have my blue book with me, but. Anyway, not putting that as any kind of
Yeah.
deterrent to making recommendation, don't get me wrong.
Yeah,
I guess I see DAC as giving us feedback about prior to making a decision. The board in itself has to make the decision that the board feels like is in the best interest. But I think your feedback could be helpful. I'm just wondering too, because a lot of times we come to the table, we don't know really what decision is gonna happen until we all hear each other
Yeah, that's the.
and hear what we're discussing. So like you being here, I know you're here as part of that getting information, but it's pretty critical that we have a discussion, because that's where the meat of that whole decision comes out of. So it's something to think in terms of, as we talk about different topics in work session, that you really, take your notes and be able to bring it back and say that, this is going to be coming up. Do we have any feedback? Now, that's not all the topics, that's the thing, so.
Yeah, it's hard. I was just trying to think how that could work, because we only vote on the action items. The discussion items are still in the works, and some of those will turn into action items, others are just purely discussion. So I'm just trying to think, because the action items are usually most of them are straightforward. Recommendations to hire and to accept resignations and bills and stuff like that are pretty standard. And I don't know, they say now, this is something that you could talk about with like the draft policy, the draft of the superintendent goals, because we're just adopting a draft. Because we need to talk to staff, we need to get their input. You could also put recommendations from the accountability committee, right?
I'm not sure if that's I'm not sure if that's an appropriate place for the accountability committee, and I struggle with this a bit because I've been in Tigo's seat, Katie, you've been in Tigo's seat, and for years we've encouraged the growth and participation of DAC. I was the one screaming for it too, but I'm mindful of the fact that this is a scheduling conundrum, really, at its core. If we were to be prior to, I think we wouldn't be having this conversation.
Just a matter of the schedule.
It's a matter of the schedule, and unfortunately this year, and we're on the downward slide of this year, I think we're gonna have to finish off the year, do our best to share our agenda in advance of your meeting, or in advance of our meeting, I'm sorry, and ask you to send that out, and then we're gonna have to just look at our timing.
Conversations.
You're working with Todd on the calendar committee now, so maybe that's part that you just are mindful of for the calendar next year. And then we'll be at a better place, because I always wanted that same insight myself, as a member of DAC. So I know that sitting in your seat, you're probably getting some of that pull from your membership, and rightfully so. For me, it was always budget. And budget is really hard and really long. It's a very long process. So there's, I think I have seen in my time that we're slowly making improvements. So I think as long as we're continuing down that path, we're doing better than we were 5, 6, 7 years ago. So we gotta just keep that up, because your feedback is valuable.
Yeah.
Mr. Cordray was kind enough to just share with Tigo our calendar that has all of the various kind of calcified pieces of the planning of the strategic plan and what we'll be talking about. That pretty much is set in stone, but it gives you a heads up on, while you may not have the document from Audion per se, although it might, we're doing a work session that might hit before. You might have some stuff to talk about with your group, just like as an overview, maybe not specificity, but yeah. But thanks for bringing that to our attention.
Yeah, we appreciate that. Thank you, Tigo, for the work you all are doing.
So
Hey, any other comments, questions for Tigo?
Go ahead, Tim.
I'm just looking through the statutes, and they're very specific for the DAC. And there's nothing in here at all about budget review, making recommendations to the principal on school priorities for spending school monies, including federal funds where applicable, to the principal, not necessarily the board. Making recommendations to the principal and superintendent concerning preparation of a school performance improvement plan, if either type of plan is required. Publicizing and holding accountability committee meetings to discuss strategies to include school priority improvement, if either type of plan is required. Recommendation to the local school board concerning preparation of the school priority improvement or turnaround plan prior to the plan being written.
That's for the state turnaround, right?
If there's a state turnaround plan, yes. Publicizing the district's public hearing and review of written school priority improvements or turnaround plan. That's related to what our recommendation is going to be tonight. Meeting these quarterly to discuss whether, and these are the statutes.
Yeah, you're reading the statutes. I always operated off the DAC handbook from the Colorado
Yeah.
Department of Education. And I think that's what you have also, Tigo. And so I don't know that the translation is perfect.
No, I'm just saying what the law says, what the exact things are. And I'm not saying that you guys don't do more or can't do more.
And maybe I would ask too, is that, right now, this is how the DAC has been structured, what the DAC has been asked. And so I would ask that if there could be even a clearer, charge for the DAC from the board, then we could more clearly do our job.
And that's
more
what
efficiently.
we've done that in the past, where there's something that we need, we give a charge to the DAC, please
Yes.
help us with that. And that's how it's operated more in the past. And that's where the recommendations have come from, is if we
Right.
charge you with something, you'll come back, you know, if we, heaven forbid, if we wanted to ban a book, we would go to you guys, okay?
Okay,
I know, but we would go to you, and then give recommendations, okay? I know I should have brought that up. I knew something, yeah.
To the point that I was making earlier, Tim, if you look at your district accountability committee responsibilities in the handbook, the very first bullet point reads, recommending to its local school board priorities for spending school district monies. That, I think, is interpreted as being able to look at the budget.
Oh, no, I'm
Right, so I
not-
think that's where that commentary may be coming from. I like the idea around the clarification based on the handbook itself, because it's only gonna make us stronger.
Yeah, go.
So I would like to maybe have a follow-up before going into next school year, and I'll make a note that that be something that we need to,
And that's part of, gonna be part of our policy review because we have.
Yes, it
ancillary-
is.
We have ancillary policies related to
Absolutely.
DAC.
Well, and I would say that you just read statutes that, it's like, we give recommendations to the principals, and I don't know if that's what our district wants. I don't know how comfortable I feel about that. And so that's why I said, like, maybe I would charge you all to review that
Yeah.
and
So.
give us a
So
appropriate.
wondering whether that could be on a future
I was gonna
agenda
say,
this
for future
summer,
agenda.
as
That's
it relates
making
to
notes,
more
yeah.
clearly identifying what we want DAC to do.
Yep.
Yeah,
That's really the reality,
appreciate
because we can interpret
Thanks.
all kinds of stuff.
yeah, totally, yeah.
Yeah,
But we do want your feedback, though. I
Yeah.
think it's important.
I'm not saying don't.
Yes, we appreciate what y'all are having to say.
Yeah, and the budget thing, I was thinking that was not the total school budget. I was thinking that was items like
It's
we need books in the
purchases.
library or, whatever. So those big purchases
priorities is what
would
it's.
come through the recommendations would come through the DAC.
Anyway, yeah.
Yeah.
But it wasn't to sit down with Chris.
There's a whole slew of stuff in here to guide us in that direction. And I'd also mention that many districts have more than just a district accountability. They have school accountability committees as well.
Mhm.
So we're functioning on a much condensed basis and asking even more of our DAs. And should be mindful of that. Yeah, they're covering all of the schools.
We have it on the future agenda. I
have a note down, yes.
Future agenda item. for the
Yeah, that's why
board.
I put more clearly identify what we want, DAC.
Okay.
DAC.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's good.
I've got it
Let's
too.
move on.
Okay, we've got the. Oh, okay, LRC. Okay, LRC is active. Meeting twice a month. This last time, I just wanted to say on House Bill 23-1003, we all looked at, they have heavily amended it. When you look at the amendments, I tried, but I'm not a lawyer and I don't read lawyerese very well. Wow, I mean, it is very specific on what you can and cannot do. And to me, it's really endorsing the iMatters program. They've changed all of the assessment words to screenings, which means an online screener. So to me, I don't know if you guys have heard about the shooting in Utah where the father shot the mother-in-law, and all the kids. The mother had gone through a screener, said, no, she had a back door and she didn't need any help. Obviously she did. So screeners don't always work. We're not talking about a professional sitting here. We're talking about an online thing. So I don't know where this is coming from. But there's no money allotted for the next 3 years, and they put a lot into this. The school district would have to buy into iMatters because that's the online platform that they've recognized here in the document. The good news is that the bill, the language here, the bill allows any public school that serves any of grades 6 through 12 to participate. Allows, okay, that's an important word. I'm learning this from lawyers. And requires a public school that wants to participate in the program to notify the department so you can opt out. Okay, so it just takes some research to see if this is best for our district, how much it would cost. If you guys like the online screening, if our counselors, I would give their opinions about online screenings to see how appropriate they are, how meaningful they are. So I would go there rather than, I don't know, but it's gonna pass, but luckily we can opt out, but we need to do our homework to see.
Is that an opt-out or do we opt in?
The one is an opt-in, the way I'm reading it, sorry, it is
It's
an
an opt-in.
opt-in.
That's a big
Okay.
difference.
So, yeah, that's better for us. So anyway, so keep your eye on that one because it's just, every time I look at it, they've added another amendment to it. And they're taking out huge, big chunks of it. So it doesn't look like the original. All right, the other ones we talked about. I think we started talking about this earlier, but it's Senate Bill 23071. That's the Education Accountability Act, and that was driven by Adams 14. Several years ago, they were forced to accept a superintendent that they had no say in. It was hired by the State Board of Ed. And this bill says that the schools can appeal any ruling on anything to our courts, to the judicial. The fear going forth, we're going to give you both sides of the coin. Going forth is that it's going to go to the State Board of Ed. It narrows the title and the scope. But then I talked to Kathy Gephardt. At first, it looked like LRC kind of a lot of members like this. But she said to ask yourself who you wants to be in control of your school. Do you want local control or do you want the courts to take over? Because if we start going to the courts and challenging the State Board of Ed, then you have a court, you have a judge that's going to make the decision for you. So again, I want to get more with Ms. Gephardt. She's amazing. She's an attorney, and she's from Boulder, and she's the vice president of the board up there. So she's been real heavily involved in education. She's the one that got the funds to start the BEST program. She was on the BEST board when we went for our grant from them. So anyway, that's another one to keep an eye on and see and do some research and talk to people about it, because there's pros and cons on both sides. Okay, it is what it is.
Can I ask a clarifying question?
Do that.
So right now, if a school district is underperforming, and I think there has to be a consistency with that
It's like 5
underperformance,
years or
right?
so,
Like
yeah.
so many years and it's based on, I believe, graduation rates or test scores, I don't know. Test scores?
It's a variety of factors.
Okay.
It includes both sides.
Okay, so right now, if a school district is underperforming,
Mhm.
then is it the Department of Education, the Colorado Department of Education that steps in and takes over that district?
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
okay, and they can then put someone at the helm of that district, take over the management of that district to right the ship.
Mhm.
So this particular bill is taking that away from the Department of Education and putting it into,
Well, they can still do that, but you can challenge them to court. So it weakens their position.
okay, so the state can still step in and take over the school.
Right.
But this is then saying the school can take the state to court,
Right,
which could prolong the inefficiencies of the district.
Right.
Right.
It could.
You could assume. Okay,
Right now, they put a law, legislators put a law in place and they didn't give districts or local districts across the state of Colorado any options
it's just
around.
we're taking over.
We're taking over,
Exactly.
but that's one example. It could be anything that they might put at the state level. So it
Okay.
doesn't have to be, I'm taking over your district. It could be any kind of mandate from the state. Right now, most agencies have the ability to take it to court. We don't as a district,
Right.
local
Okay.
district. There's no language, there's no pathway for us to do that. This creates a pathway.
Yeah.
Okay,
And I have to backtrack on what I said was wrong too, because CD does take over, and then if we don't like that, we appeal to the State Board of Ed. Okay, and they're the ones that then, and on Adams 14, they eventually did back off and let Adams 14 get their own superintendent, which they have now. So they were able to hire their own, but that's who's driving this. And so when you,
Adams is driving it?
Yeah.
Okay,
they're driving this, they're the ones that have want this
okay.
to
Well,
pass.
because
if they
it
want to be
appeals
able
to
take it the
CDE, when they put their program in place and you're appealing to them, that's, why should they change their view of their own policy if they've taken over and put stuff in place in the school? Why should they even bother reviewing it?
They act
So
as
this-
judge and jury.
Yeah, this allows for an outside judicial intervention.
It does.
Right.
And like Kathy said, though, the way the bill is written, and like I said, I'm not a lawyer, so I don't understand that. But she said the way it's written, it will not give us the local control we want. It will not give us what we want.
I'll read
It'll
the
just
bill.
basically turn over all the decisions to a judge. Then may or may not lay my skin in the game. They may or not understand education. It's a different field. So both kinds, both sides of that. Please look at that. And again, the accountability, the DACT too, look at those email your representatives. Kathy Gephardt, like I say, you can Google her, but through the Boulder schools, you could probably get a hold of her, but she's the one that I really run to because she's so knowledgeable on both sides of it. So,
Thank you for that clarification.
yeah, thanks for the question. I get thinking, two seats are open, we need to look for a lawyer. Somebody that understands that. All right. School education, is House Bill 23-1188. It's education and school finance, pre-K-12. And they're setting up, they want to set up, which we could do it or a charter school could do it, to offer individualized learning program or to become an individualized learning school. So a child doesn't want to come, but you have this organization and you have to meet with them once a week. They basically are an online platform is what I understand. The thing that got me down here on this, and you'll have to read the bill, but they said that this bill for the 23-24 and the 24-25 state fiscal years, the bill requires an individualized learning entity. So there has to be a governing group on that. They will entitled to receive the public school funding if a school is enrolled in the program entity. So they can get the PPR for the student. So it's a lot more than it looks.
But we have to manage it to a certain
No,
extent.
another person could come in and decide to start one of these through a charter school or through us. Okay, and then they're gonna management, but then they also get the funds for the students that they have.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes. And what was the number? 1188?
1118.
Yeah, 1188.
Thank you.
Okay. And then the other one I think we discussed before was Senate Bill 23065, and that's the Career Development Success Programs. And I know Mr. Cartery went to the kind of a career thing last week, and this may, you may have more information on this, but it removes the requirement for a successful completion of a qualified industry pre-apprenticeship program and the requirement for successful completion of a qualified industry apprenticeship. So the thing on that with the funding, and I don't know how they're going to do that. I think I talked about that before, but they have, if you have pupils in the program, students in the program, and they're eligible for free or reduced lunch, which they're going to have to measure that a different way, then we can receive 120% of the per pupil funding for that one. So I don't know how that's going to play into the career ed that the state is I don't know, do you know how that's going to play into that at all?
Yeah, I think it's going to be part of the CDIP program.
Okay,
So which is the certification development incentive program, CDIP.
okay,
And so CDIP currently was funded at 4.5 million. And now it looks like if this passes and gets signed,
was
it'll be
10.
funded at 5.5 for this year. And then next year, 10 million.
okay,
And that's really is critical for us, because it's the CDIP that was intended to be when a certificate was reached by a student, the school district would get $1,000. But it's been so popular that last year, and since it was a finite amount of money, that so many people were getting career certifications that instead of it being $1,000, last year it was $465.
okay,
So-
there wasn't enough money,
Right, because it was a set amount.
right?
Now, for this year, it should pass and it'll be 5.5 million. And then for next year, it should be 10 million.
Do you think do you think the demand will supersede the funding that they're getting? Do you think that $1,000, the certification would garner some lesser amount like it did this year moving forward?
For next year, it'll be less than 1,000,
Yeah, but more than 400?
but I don't know, it could be 465 again, because like
Because the
Next-
popularity.
next
Yeah.
year, we'll be making application, we'll be turning in about 160 to 174, 175 career certifications. So if it was at that 1,000,
Ooh,
that's
that'd be-
great, but even if it's at the 465, that's
Still
still
considerable.
an additional, $85,000 to the school
Okay.
district.
So what do you think about the removes the requirement for successful completion of a qualified industry apprenticeship program? And the requirement for successful completion of a qualified industry apprenticeship. So the apprenticeships go away.
Well, I think, I don't know, and that's the thing about the career certifications, that there are, you can get them by completing a course. Like my students today started a CDIP course, and that's what we worked on today as a group. And then you can also reach that attainment through an approved apprentice program or internship.
Okay,
So there's-
they're just removing the requirement. So you can do the apprenticeship or you can do the CDIP and
Right.
get the certification.
Yep, you could do
Okay.
either.
Okay, great. That helps.
So
a
we're,
lot.
yeah, so we'll see how that works
Okay.
itself out. But then the other piece is weighting it more according to if the school district has a high free and reduced percentage,
Uh-huh.
of which we do.
Mhm.
So we could be funded at a higher amount for
I see.
certification.
I see.
Okay. Wow. Okay, and I think, those are my notes. I think that was pretty much it. We meet again on Friday. So I think that was, I did want to say the one that was really, I was excited about, and it's going to, I think it's going to pass, is House Bill 231064 is the Interstate Teacher Mobility Compact. So that means a teacher from New Mexico or Utah, Tennessee can come and they can quickly get a Colorado certificate so that they can be a licensed teacher in our state.
Nice.
This came from the military, basically the families that move around a lot.
All compacts usually do.
Yeah, that was hard for them when they would move from state to state. They move in from, I don't know, back east to Fort Carson or Weber, and they'd have to go back to school, even though they taught school for 10 years. So that's gonna do away with that. And I think that's gonna really help everybody.
Yes, it kicks in when all 10 states identified in the bill join the compact,
Yeah,
and that's when it kicks in.
I think it'll help retain teachers instead of them dropping out, because I think
Yeah.
there's a certain percentage that don't go through the effort of recertifying.
Yeah,
what needs to-
yeah.
So, yeah.
anyway, okay, that's all I have for LRC. So, Mr. Figueroa, you have CASB.
Okay, well, Casby, Pam and I really looked at the same bill, this Senate Bill
sorry.
23071. So I gave you a copy anyway of the information. I don't want to talk about it again because I think it's, Pam did a good job talking about it. But I do want you to be aware that right now, there's no recourse for local districts. That's the big issue, where for many other agencies, they have a recourse. Doesn't mean that the districts have to go to court. Nobody's forcing them to go to court, but at least it's an option to go to court. And it's not just about taking over districts, it's about any issue that the State Board of Education chooses to put or enact or enforce upon a local district. So I just thought it'd be important for you. I know CASB supports this. That doesn't mean that we should support it. I'm simply
That's
saying to
interesting.
look into it more, investigate
Because the
and,
LRC hasn't come out with
Yeah.
a decision yet. That's interesting that
Yeah.
CASB jumped the
I mean,
gun.
they sent it out and they said you should support it, but,
That's interesting.
so I'm gonna move on because that was the gist of my.
Oh, I'm
my
sorry.
report.
But it's
May I-
That's okay.
it's pretty darn short.
Yeah, she made a clarifying question.
Yeah.
Real quickly, I'm just kind of reading it now, but was there a discussion of arbitration in any of this? I mean, we're talking about going to court, which seems very like
Sure.
the last end of it, but to me, like, the pathway of arbitration seems like a legitimate path for
You know, these
school
between
districts.
educators.
Yeah,
This
The
whole.
bill I
I'll read
read
it to you.
didn't have,
It's 5 sentences, it's not even 5 sentences long.
Yeah.
The school district, they're going to add this to section 5 of 2211-209 in regulations. A school district or the institute may seek judicial review in accordance with section 244106 or file a civil action for declaratory relief pursuant to Article 51 of Title 13 against any rule, regulation, or final order of the state board issued pursuant to this article.
And to note that Adams 14 went to court, and I think they lost because they didn't have the ability to do that.
They did not
And
have
they
a
went
pathway.
back to the state, they went back to the state board and they compromised. State board compromised with them and they were able to get the superintendent that they had some buy-in. So it just isn't somebody that the CD sent in. So there was some things there that the state board could kind of help maybe act as an arbitrator.
This is
I
not
don't
saying
know.
anything about taking away local control.
Well, you take away, what the lawyer said in that is you take away local control if you take it to the courts, because now you're not going to decide CD and state board is not going to decide, a judge is going to decide.
But you have to
So-
make that decision, whether that's still
That's
local
true.
control. You
But
make
you
the
give
choice
that
to take it
choice
there.
away and you have to live by that.
Yep, well, that's the law.
Yep,
Anyway, it's really short.
yeah, it is.
So I just want to make you aware of some trainings that CASB has. Again, it's what they offer to support local districts. Again, you can call them and create a custom board retreat training for your board based on what you really need. Roles and responsibility, they have training around that. Community engagement, they have trainings around that. And then habits of an effective board, they have trainings around that. So just something to be aware of. I went to the rural board members roundtable last month. And we, again, the big question for all the rural districts, and there were probably about 15 there this time around, had to do really with recruit, retain, and compensate our staff.
Okay.
And so the real discussion was, what are people doing in your community to try to create more monies to compensate your staff, as well as be able to recruit and retain. And I think we're all, in the same boat. We're really looking at the state and trying to figure out whether they're going to fully fund us this year. There's certainly some bills that are moving forward, but it seems like every year it falls short when the time comes. They don't make it a priority. And I guess, when
There's
I
only
was
so
reading
much
a lot of
money.
the information, it boils down to whether the state of Colorado makes education a priority. That's really what it comes down to. Because if they make the state of Colorado education a priority, then we would get fully funded. Right now, we are like 48th in the states across the nation. It's just hard for me to believe that Colorado's that far down. I mean, it's hard to believe. So anything we can do to encourage our legislators, please. And, I encourage our community to speak up and speak out as well, because they're the ones that, we're all the ones that elect these senators and these representatives in the House. So,
Yeah, Polis is working on paying. I was trying to think, I just heard it today. Do you remember what the amount was? He wants to pay down the BS factor. I can't remember. It was a sizable amount. I know it's budget stabilization, but we all call it the BS. But anyway, he wanted to buy that down and then more next year, and they were hoping to have it bought completely done and out in 3 to 4 years. I don't know if that's realistic, but that would really help. If we could educate DAC even on what the budget stabilization is, they've stolen billions from our kids. And we need its end.
I'm just wondering whether CASB could help support even, have a,
They have in the past. I mean, that is one of the standing revolution, or
Right.
resolutions.
But I'm
they
thinking
think.
about accountability, presented accountability, what exactly stabilization is.
Yeah,
Just
that
so
might
that
be a
they're
good-
clear about it.
that would be a really good presentation, because that's something that they need to be educated about. They fund you at this, but then they take this punch away and actually give you this, because that's an IOU, basically. So,
It's something I brought up to Victor via email, but maybe this would be appropriate now. Sherry Wright, from the Cortez School District is our representative. And I wonder if it would behoove us to have her come and meet with us as our representative. Of course, we have Victor, who's doing a great job, but she's our region
Region 12, right?
representative. And to be honest with you, I don't know if we've ever really had like a specific discussion on our priorities to her as our regional representative. And I think that might, I'm not quite sure if that would be fruitful, but I think it's certainly worth the conversation. So
If the board wants it to happen, I certainly could organize that and see if she can come in, but preferably if she came in. What I asked the board though is for us to have some discussion about what are our priorities, what are the things we really
I think-
want,
That'd be a really good thing. though.
Sherry to know and be
Yeah.
able to represent us as a board. So,
yeah, and it's something that I was thinking about in regards to one of the things is that have that be a standing standing meeting, annual meeting. And I think maybe if we could put it into some sort of cadence where it's before possibly the various different CASB meetings, general meetings or something like that. That way she's very clear on what we as a district are asking of her as our representative.
Mhm.
sure.
That's a really good idea.
Yeah, I mean, if we can put it on one of these agendas for work session, it gives us the ability to at least discuss and we can come up with 3, and we can have her come and we can give it to her and figure out what Katie just said is when should we have these meetings with her on a yearly basis?
Yeah, she should be checking in as our regional rep.
Hmm.
Yeah. Did you guys hear that too? The Durango's now offering signing bonuses?
Yes, I did read that.
I thought that was interesting.
So just so you guys know, the meeting, they talked about to try to figure out how they're trying to recruit, retain, and compensate teachers. We talked about sale taxes again, how some communities are pushing that. Some communities, not many, are looking at mill levy possibility, again, at least asking the questions, really. They don't feel great about it because it's not a great time for that, but they're asking questions. And I think I think we probably are doing the most in the sense of trying to study this through a committee, trying to figure out what our community maybe is going to be able to withstand as it relates to trying to support this idea of recruiting, retaining, compensating. And again, it's tough times from an economic perspective for any of those things. I just want to remind you, I talked about this last time, Board President Cafe is February 16th, this Thursday, and the topic is superintendent evaluations. Just want you to be aware, anybody can join that meeting. I know Pam, you go to it pretty normally. I'm going to join that particular one
Yeah,
and see what I
I
can
did the one last year. It
glean
was,
from it.
it was real different because they have a real different style. I mean, they involve their community heavily
Mhm.
in it, so in the process. Or at least that's what the talk was about last time. It'll be interesting to see what it is now.
Mhm. And then lastly, I wanted to thank our pre-K-12 staff and principals for their warm welcome when I visited classrooms last week. It's an honor to be part of the Mancos School District, it really is.
So you have a designated time that you go in?
I went to preschool on Monday,
Okay.
just visited, and then I visited elementary on Tuesday, and I visited the high school on Wednesday.
Okay, for half a day or what?
Basically try to get into classrooms, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Cool, good job. Okay, anything else for Victor? Okay, Ms. Cahill Boces.
We have a meeting on this Wednesday. And so I have the agenda for that. I did meet with Ms. Royce Trainum maybe a week or so ago, and we discussed just kind of the temperature that's happening at San Juan Boces right now. I have not, I did not hear, maybe Mr. Cordray could, but I know that Cortez, Montezuma Cortez I think they're moving forward with looking at the possibility of applying to pull out of the San Juan Boces. But as Royce was very clear and honest about that, that is a long, long process. So that goes through the CDE. But many of you, I know Tim and Pam were here when Durango pulled.
It's an
And we looked
expensive
at that
process
too.
too. I don't know where they're gonna find the funding to do that.
Yeah, we looked at that too as a district.
Yeah.
It
I
was
mean, we-
above our pay grade.
Yeah, so anyway, it's just something that we need to really just know that's on the horizon, and it will essentially, depending on how things go, we might be at kind of status quo, or we might be looking at kind of a shift in services and costs, and that's just something we're gonna we'll look down the future, but I don't want to get too involved in that right now, because we're so far away from it. But so that will be happening. I don't know if it's certainly not on the agenda for Wednesday. We had a policy review, and then I will be bringing some a quick, I believe it's on the agenda as a discussion item. I'll double about appointing a secondary person to BOCES. And then was it on I can't remember if we're voting on it, but we'll probably have to vote on that and make that appointment. I think it would be good for us to have a second person. Yeah, so that's that. So I'll have a proper report for y'all in March.
In review of the bylaws, and I know we'll get there, it becomes apparent that that secondary person become pretty imperative. Because without a consensus, like it just crumbles and you have no voice. So I'm mindful of that.
Yeah.
Well, not only that, I will say, one of the things that I found through my tenure on BOCES is that they can't always get a quorum.
Oh,
Even if it's,
scary.
yeah, even,
Yeah.
and
You
it's,
say it falls apart.
Falls apart.
yes, and I think, so, I think it was Pam that brought up is like, oh, and so I did, Royce was kind enough to pull that for me to make sure that was,
good.
yeah.
I
so
always thought, because I attended several BOCES meetings when I wasn't our representative,
I see,
just to fill in when
yeah,
our rep couldn't go, and
Right.
there was
You
never
could do
an
that,
issue.
but do you have voting rights when you just
Yeah.
go as a board?
I was representing our board.
yeah. Well, this would make it official.
I don't think it had never been an issue that other people attended that weren't this special BOCES rep.
Okay.
Yeah, but like I said, they canceled meetings because we didn't have a quorum,
Yeah.
and a lot of it is on Zoom, and so there really isn't, unless you're really like out and capable of making it. It's not an egregious board meeting to attend. Yeah, okay,
So you don't even have to go to Durango.
but they do feed
May
you.
I?
And they do, yeah, they do. That's a
Casby,
plus.
when I meet on with Casby's rule roundtable, does anybody have any questions that you want me to ask them? I want to make sure I'm getting anything that you guys want to focus on. I'm going to continue to ask the questions around recruit, retain, and compensate as it relates to bills. But does anybody have some other topics that you want me to ask them as it relates to what other school districts across the state, school districts across the state are doing?
I don't have any off the top of my head.
If you guys think about that and you have some, please send me them, okay? Because I need to register and they usually want to know questions ahead of time. I know housing is something on my
Yeah, that is.
agenda, and so I'm gonna put that down, but if anybody else has anything else that I can report back, at least to say, this is what other districts are doing right now, please
think
let
it-
me know.
I think it'd be good to take that presentation that we received from Lunders that DAC just received and take a look at that. Particularly the placement of things that may or may not cost a great deal of funds, and see if any other districts have any experience in any of those initiatives.
Mhm.
So you take just the page out of that PowerPoint, and then housing is part of that, right? But you can look at those, yeah, there were those ideas that were outside of the box.
Mhm.
Statute calls those teacherages.
Teachers.
Teacherages.
Teacherages.
Yeah, that's what they call it.
That's in statute.
Well, it was shared, did we ever get a copy of that
Get a copy of
presentation?
Oh, I have it, we have it
PowerPoint.
electronically.
Oh, you,
Did we
Or
get it?
maybe I just got that
I
electronically.
don't know that
because
the board did.
I put that
because-
into
Well, you put it
some of
into
my
it.
things.
Right.
Yeah, so if we can get a copy of the Lunders PowerPoint, that would be
Yeah,
fantastic.
yeah.
Actually,
And I'd like it for the upcoming linkage meeting.
this might be a little bit of a stretch, but it's something to consider, Victor, is that if that's the conversation, is there a coalition of folks in the rural districts that we can then, we're talking about forming various different committees under this. Should we be going outside of our own?
To join.
Our own community and looking at other communities who are basically to create an advisory board, kind of like greater minds. I don't know, it's a question I have for you, if you're on there, say, are there people who would be interested in grouping together as a, rural co-action advisor? Because maybe there are things that we need to be discussing regularly with a small group of folks who are very active and ready to take next steps instead of just getting on these Zoom calls and bantering the conversation about, we are really in an action-oriented state right now. I feel like we are creating plans, and I would like to join forces with other districts that could help us all lift all boats.
Collaborative coalitions.
Collaborative coalitions,
I
and
would like
the
to-
alliteration.
Yeah, and I would like that though with like-minded, and not like-minded, but districts that are about our size that have the same issues. I mean, because you go to some mountain districts and they don't have the same issues that we do. But,
I'll ask that question, but I think that's part of what they're saying is that this is the forum where we talk about what is everybody doing to get these ideas and to dig into it more with them. But on your part, that's not an action committee really. We're just grabbing ideas. We're really not.
Well, and I would empower you to find those people you find as our representative, who you find the most in step with what we're doing. And maybe make that next level is do some outreach through this initial medium.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And maybe that's something we talked to Sherry about as well. We need to start having very specific conversations with all of the various different entities that we're in charge of, and really maximize our membership to these entities. I want to get all of our money out of these.
well, and to your point, they did that at Casby one year at the delegate assembly the day before the workshops. They had one that was just, they put us in our region. So reason 12, we were all
They're all
at the
together, yeah.
table, and the conversation got around to, wow, why aren't we meeting? Why aren't we getting together as a region? I think we're missing something, and that needs to be brought up to Sherry, is we need to be organized as a region.
Right, and you know, actually, we did talk about that, Pam,
Okay,
when we were together,
Uh-huh.
about meeting twice this year
okay,
as a group.
right.
Meaning, you know, Ignacio, us,
Pagosa.
Pagosa,
Cortez,
right,
Dolores,
and find a
Duncan.
place like Ignacio, we said it might be a central place to get everybody together. And just discuss what are the things, because now that we can vote, not only being present, but online, we still need to come together to talk about what, you know, what are the main issues in our region?
Yeah, yeah, that was really powerful that day that we were all sitting at the same table and it's
It
like,
is
wow.
pretty
You
powerful.
know, yeah, it really is. Ooh,
Right, gotta go
okay.
on.
It
All
just
right.
means we need to find somebody to work the time and space continuum to allow more time. I don't have any more time for meetings like that.
Well, but this was the delegates that met, you know, that was at the Casby.
I know, I'm just
Assembly,
saying,
so-
we can, there's a lot of great things we could do in collaboration. It's just how to put it together and the time allowed for it.
Yeah, well, if we get a representative though, if all the districts get a representative, they can take it back to us and, you know, we can kind of further it from there. Shoot me down.
You're not on the list.
I still want to work the time space continuum.
Okay, I'm moving on. All right, superintendent's report.
Thank you. Let's go somewhere else.
You feeling ignored over there?
So, to the conversation about retention and recruitment. On February 1st, I did share that presentation with our regional superintendents at a superintendent meeting. So they've all seen the retention and recruitment work that we've done.
Mhm.
And some of them have shared them with their finance committees, specifically the ones in our county, since the ones in our county pertain to potentially county-wide solutions for retention and recruitment. I'm meeting with the admin team tomorrow, and I should be securing a time to get that presentation to our staff on the 24th as well.
Okay, cool.
And we have a tentative date set for public presentations of the retain and recruit on March 2nd and March 3rd, one on campus, one off campus, to attract community input into that process as well. Following the March 2nd and March 3rd community meetings, then we should be ready to launch, then move from kind of an ad hoc environment to a full-fledged committee environment where we form one big committee with several subcommittees involved with that. So that retention and recruitment work continues to progress and build interest and I feel like we have really good information in that report to share with really everyone in our county and beyond. At that same superintendent meeting on February 1st, we did have a conversation just in an informal environment around what would that look like if Montezuma Cortez pulled out of San Juan Boces. And all the superintendents were at this meeting, and it was in Ignacio. And there was a good amount of pressure put upon Cortez also to stay within the collaboration of San Juan Boces, because this just did not seem like the appropriate time for change, and also change that could potentially impact everyone else's financial obligation for special education. So there was a good amount of pressure shared with the Montezuma Cortez superintendent that this was not the right time to do that. And superintendents stood up figuratively and said that they'd also help support Montezuma Cortez getting their grievances heard by San Juan Boces to clear up any issues that they may be feeling. So I feel like there's good progress made on that, a good group coming together. And then San Juan BOCES is also the fiscal agent for that very large co-action grant that we're partnered on with the three other school districts, Dove Creek, Dolores, and Cortez. And we now have a submission date to be able to submit our expenses for this year. They've allocated $425,000 for materials for pathways and additional monies for curriculum. So Christy has those forms, and her and I will be working on getting those submitted by February 20th. And that's when those are due by. So we're past the initial 6 months of planning. So now we're at a place where we could submit our expenses. The good news is the other school districts were ahead of them in the process, and it's only a 2-year process. So I feel like we're in a good position to go to those school districts and say, fund us this year, and we won't need to be funded next year for startup because we did our first year startup this year.
Oh, yes.
So,
Then they can
because
split.
startup is the most expensive part and the most difficult part. And that's really what this co-action really helps with. For us, being sustainable goes to the CDIP conversation we had before, where we're gonna have anywhere from 160 to 200 career certifications that our high school students are earning this year. So that will generate the year-over-year money that we need for sustaining our pathways.
Is that because of the $1,000 from that legislation?
Yes,
465.
right, anywhere from $465 to $1,000 per career certification.
465.
Yes, and that's what's going up from 4.5 million in the pocket for the previous year to 5.5 million for this year, and then 10 million for the following year after, and staying at that. So that really is key for small districts like us who can't afford to do pathways unless there's additional funding to it. The other major piece for funding is last year, we didn't have any approved career CTE programs. This year we'll have 4 approved. So we'll be able to take all of our expenses and then turn those in for partial reimbursement. And that partial reimbursement, like special ed, is close to 20 to 30%. So we'll submit a couple $100,000 in total expenses, and we'll get 20 to 30% back. And that's also part of the sustainability process of our pathways. And
May I
yes,
ask a quick question? Is that there's no fiscal agent in that regard on that last pot of money that is directly to CDE? So we don't have any concerns about communication or deadlines or anything like
no,
that?
with
Excellent.
CDIP and with CTE, there's no middleman there at all.
Perfect.
We
Okay.
directly apply. So in October, we'll be receiving a couple $100,000 that we otherwise have never received before. And that's money then that will reoccur every year thereafter, as long as we have career certifications
Okay.
and as long as we maintain our approved programs.
Excellent.
Which you'll need for curriculum and supplies.
Yeah, and that's all very normal and natural process. And the hardest part is standing up the programs initially, because there's credentialing, there's materials, there's course approvals, and then there's also setting up CTSOs, which are the Career Tech Student Organizations.
Oh, yeah.
So for like my organization, we signed up as DECA. So now my kids are in DECA. For Janet's culinary program, they're in, I believe it's called HOSA, is the CTSO. And then we've also had our CTE advisory committee, where we had over, 11 people show up to this room where we talked about our career tech ed plan as the school district. So we're right on track with all those. And so this last week was really critical. It was just important because it gave us that face-to-face opportunity to speak with all those directors for those areas. So like we spoke with Seth, who's in charge of welding, and we spoke with Jeremy, who's in charge of healthcare. And we spoke with the new lady who took over for Dana in business. And we did the same for culinary. So it was really effective and.
So Todd, can I ask a question?
Sure.
Just for clarification, CDEP is the initial monies that is that what it's called, CDEP?
CDIP, so there's two pockets.
Okay.
CDIP is certification. It's an acronym
Okay,
for,
certification.
yes,
That's
And
the,
then-
that's the 400 to 1,000.
yes,
Okay, got it.
per career certification.
Right.
So, yep,
And then what's the other one?
CTE, Career Tech Ed, and it's from the Career Tech Education Act of Colorado.
Okay,
And that's where we get 20 to 30% reimbursement for all of our programming for those pathways.
okay.
And that's year over year.
So it's 20, so right now we've spent $200,000, let's just say, right
Right.
on that, right? That's where the pot of money that we're trying to get reimbursed for
No.
that, is that a different?
That's different.
That's a third pot.
Co-action is a third pocket of money.
Okay, that's
That's
a-
the 1.7 million in the grants.
so are you expecting to be fully reimbursed for that?
I would say probably 80% there.
Okay,
And then we have these other two pockets as well.
that you're hoping will make up for the 200,000
Yeah.
at this point.
Yeah, so we have all kinds of revenue opportunities we'll be well healed and then some.
Okay.
And then it's also year over year. Those are the CDIP and the CTE are year over year. The co-action money is just for 2 years. 800,000 this year, 900,000 the following year, and then it's gone. Yeah, so it's nice that there's a variety of pockets for us. And then I also have some other grants out there that I haven't heard on that would also support us for the pathways.
Mhm.
Just to make sure, because frankly, this is a big deal financially, so I want to make sure that we're covered. So this last week, I wrote another grant for $30,000 that would offset our drones pathway. So we'll see if we get that or not. But being in that environment is how I learned about that other grant for $30,000. And so I got that submitted last week. So that's that. And then also in your packets, you have reports from our 3 school leaders. And I know that for the most part, they share those with their staffs as well. Those are very good reports. And I encourage our school leaders to share those with their staffs, with their staff as well. And Madam President, that's my report for today.
Okay, I have a question on the curriculum in the elementary school. That they've gotten samples and they're starting to use them in the classrooms. Reviewing all 6 curriculums and then presenting their choice at the board April 17th board meeting. But in our curriculum development, I pulled the policy that we have, and it said that the curriculum review committee shall include administrators, teachers, parents, accountability members, and others deemed appropriate by the board or superintendent. So I was just wondering how it seems like these people should have been included in this. Are they planning on including this? Do they have the policy? Do they realize that they need to include others in these decisions and it's not just the teachers?
Yep, so on January 31st, at our admin meeting, the policy was shared with Adion, Ed, and Kathy for us to make revisions to policy IG, because IG is the policy you were referring to make it better, because that was the policy. So that's in a revision process that we're going through. So it's on a Google sheet and we're making revisions to it. I'll be talking with the admin team tomorrow to see how close we are to being able to bring that revised policy back to the Board of Education. Because the Board of Education And, you know, we did have some discussion around that policy should include K-12 staff on the committee
Mhm.
so that we have alignment of curriculum from pre-K through graduation,
Right.
to make sure that it did include community members. And also to make sure that policy, that curriculum, when it's selected, takes into account our strategic plan and our school district initiatives, so that if that is an option, that curriculum gets uplifted since there's the alignment with the policy. So, before a recommendation comes to the board, I will have that updated policy before the board, and any recommendation that comes to the board for curriculum approval will be compliant with that new policy.
So just so I understand, so we have our IG curriculum development policy that we adopted within the CASB policies.
Right,
But the updated policy that you're discussing is really more of the internal process.
no,
Okay,
I'm sorry to interrupt you.
no, please.
Oh, no, it's the change to IG.
Oh, I
It
understand.
would be the
Thank you.
change to IG, keeping IG, but with those changes and maybe a few other tweaks along the way
I see.
to make sure that we now have a curriculum policy that meets the board of that meets the needs of the school district, inclusive of the board.
Thank you. Okay.
So the challenge though, and to really address a potential concern you may have too, is there is a little bit of cart before the horse in that they're reviewing curriculum, while we know we're also reviewing policy that's actually gonna govern what curriculum is selected.
So are you gonna take out some of these people that,
No, we
Because I
could
don't
add to whatever
Okay.
committees are.
but it seems like that would throw a rink in the schedule, it's off, you know, because you need to have all of those people, don't you, involved?
All of which people?
These administrators, teachers, parents, accountability members, and others deemed appropriate.
Yeah, I'm
So
hoping,
you're till like
I'm hoping,
K-12.
I'm hoping the process isn't wonky, but it is good that we're looking at curriculum. But
Yeah,
it would have
yeah.
been better if the policy, the upgraded policy was
Would have been
completed before we had done that. But there's a certain amount, there's pressures on reviewing curriculum as soon as we can also. So I think it's just a balance of those
Okay, well,
pressures.
and we still don't know that we're gonna be able to purchase anything because we don't know the budget.
That's right.
So-
Right, and we know a big part of the expenditure, how will be, we're now a READ compliant school district.
Right.
And so this year, our READ funds are about 27,000. And those funds do change every year, dependent on the number of students we have with READ plans. That's how the funding for READ is determined. If you're a school district with a lot of kids on READ plans, you
Mhm.
get more funding than if you're a school district with fewer. But that's an ideal place for READ funds to be spent,
Mhm.
is for
Yes.
ELA curriculum. It's also, because our ELA curriculum has to be one of the approved lists from CDP, and that list is pretty skinny.
Okay, okay. And so, but it's gonna be a lot more than the 27,000, we know, right?
No, this year, oh yeah, the curriculum,
curriculum.
oh, I would imagine there'll be a lot more.
Yeah.
And then we'll be looking at, are we paying that over chunks or what?
Right.
So that's all that's all yet to be determined.
Determine.
Yeah, there's a lot yet to be determined.
Okay.
And then, I did miss probably the best part of my presentation. So if you don't mind, I did receive an email from the San Juan BOCES Regional Science Fair
Oh.
Director. And I quote, Brady Archer, Stephanie Slough, and Josh Dolly students have by far the most organized, thoughtful, and rigorous projects. They should be proud of the level of depth they are providing for Mancos student STEM education. So, and that was for the Regional Science Fair And so we could, just high kudos for the quality of work our students are doing and the quality of work that our teachers are doing to help our students have really proud level of rigor here that we're uplifted in such a loud and terrific way.
Yeah, I love that. It's kind of like we can honestly say STEM is alive and well in Mancos if the students choose to follow it. So
That was really good.
yeah. All right, we are you gonna do the finance report or are we just gonna wait since Chrissy's ill?
We're gonna wait.
Okay.
If that's fine.
All right, discussion items, board linkage.
Okay.
That's how it went, Katie.
Okay. Well, there might have been differing views of that in the room, but I did report back to the board about, kind of a quick synopsis of it. I think it went well in regards to it being kind of the first step to a better relationship with Mancos Public Library. Mr. Cordray, Ms. Farrar, and myself did the presentation. It was really kind of an overview, which I shared with you guys, of kind of what we were doing. We did have, a lot of, a little bit of discussion about future programming, which then that could be, or, ideas that Ms. Farrar and Mr. Cordray could then take back to the staff. So that wasn't necessarily a board role per se, but I do think my hope is that you guys found it a good meeting to kind of springboard into next steps. In regards to next steps for the board, I think we do have a list. They seemed eager to comment or participate moving forward on any of our concerns. Of course, one of them being the recruit and retention. So my suggestion to the board is that we, of course, circle back with them and ask again for more feedback in a more specific manner. I think it seemed a little formal, that we were, and I'd hoped maybe that it would be more of an exchange, but
Right,
there you go.
first step.
First steps.
All right, and the next one is Emily.
So we have our linkage meeting planned with the town board here at the city offices. The meeting will be held on February 22nd at 6 p.m., which is next Wednesday evening. They do hold those meetings that it's technically a work session, not a town board meeting. It is held in the same facilities. And we've shared the agenda and are doing a little bit of pre-work this week prior to sitting down with all of them, but they've been very communicative with confirming, and I think we'll come to the table with quite a bit of information related to not just their agenda themselves with SRO and those sort of discussions, but also just the work that we're doing and just communication, which is exactly what we wanted. I'm hopeful that that's more of a discussion and not necessarily a presentation. I would bet that it probably will be a robust conversation versus just a presentation. And we'll have to go through it to figure out whether or not we're going to need follow-up, which I will assume we will. So we'll cross those bridges when we get there, but we're starting next Wednesday evening, February 22nd at 6.
All right. And Victor, you're next with a student group, correct?
I am, yeah.
Do you have a
So,
date?
so Todd and I met and we have already put together a Google sheet and included administrators that work with our kids. We have, I think it's March 16th date to meet with kids, but we're also surveying all the high school kids on questions from the 100,000 level, and also administrators want to put questions in there to help them kind of get some feedback from kids about, you know, some of the work they're doing right now.
So you're surveying all those kiddos?
So we're
high
doing
school?
two things. We're surveying and we're interviewing 10 kids. We're doing both.
10 kids.
And those questions that we asked on the survey, not all of them will be asked during the interview, but some of them will.
And how are you picking those 10 kids?
Those kids are being picked by administrators,
Okay.
and we agreed on the variety of kids that need to be represented.
And I'm assuming that you'll share with us the 16th, like date and time and place.
Yeah.
In case anyone else-
Well, I know
We
that
have
it's
a
gonna
board
be at
meeting
3
that
o'clock,
day.
and it's gonna be here, 3 o'clock on the 16th, and we're gonna go an hour. And it'll, you know, we'll try to get more in-depth understanding of what kids are feeling versus the survey, which will be more,
Mhm.
you know,
Robust.
more
We can
general
all look at
questions.
that.
Yeah.
My understanding, I just want to clarify, is that although each one of us are taking a lead with these linkage exercises, should one of us want to attend another, we're able to, correct?
Yes, as
So,
long as we don't get 3 board members.
right, but 2 is okay,
Yes,
okay.
I attended Katie and Todd and Adiana, at the library.
I may be able to attend yours, and I'd be
Yeah.
interested to hear from the kids.
You mentioned that the principals or the leadership team is going to add their own questions to that. In what kind of arena are those questions gonna be like?
Well, I know the board is open to everybody, so I haven't seen what those, really what those questions are, but Todd, you might elaborate more. From my understanding, it's more around the work that they're doing with, possibly with project-based learning and pathways and other types of work that they're doing as it relates to initiatives at the school level.
So we're kind of piggybacking some of their work
Yeah.
into our own linkage meeting?
Right, because
I would say back the other way. So the primary focus is the governance work,
Mm.
but as an offshoot of the governance work, there might be some opportunities for some operational data discovery.
Similar to what I said about like Audion having some like takeaways
Right.
from that discussion with people.
Okay.
Okay, I just don't want the meetings to get too diluted on purpose, you know? So I just wanna be really, like, this is our
Yeah.
way to gauge what these folks are doing. And you guys have other avenues and pathways to do
Right.
that as well. So I appreciate it, and I, you know, we're happy to all hold hands and
Yeah,
this
I
together.
really don't feel like it's gonna really, it'll be information that is good for us and good for them.
Fair enough.
From an operational perspective.
Yeah.
That, you know, when you're working with kids, students, I should say, it's gotta be different than going out to the community and meeting with the town board. We can't ask the same sort of, you
Oh, no,
know,
fair
it's
enough.
a more, you
Yeah.
know, it's a more broader, you know. I
But
wanna
it would
break
be
it down.
nice for them to know what we do. You know,
Well,
I mean, if you ask them to write down a number of, names of board members, most of them couldn't do.
So that'll be part of the
Yeah.
presentation. That'll be part of the presentation that I give initially,
Good,
introducing what the board's purpose is, why we're here.
Cool.
That's not gonna go away. It's more the details and other things on that PowerPoint that you sent that may not be appropriate for that level.
Okay. Cool. I just asked that because it looks like that's just a couple days after our next board meeting in March, since we have to move it up because of spring break. So. Okay, and then I have the one in April, and you guys, I did switch, I think I told you guys at the work meeting, but I'm doing nonprofits. Right. So I need, after our meeting, Tim, get the name of the president of Mancos Valley Resources.
Yeah,
Because I know she has a list of a lot of them. So I can
we'll have a new
contact.
president by that time.
Yeah,
We're doing board elections next week.
okay. All right, thank you, guys. The linkage is, it's going good. All right, district goals. We kind of hashed that out in our work session.
And we're gonna vote on a draft.
Yeah,
goals.
the draft, yeah,
And our
knowing that,
action on it. We have an
yeah.
action item for that, so I don't know how much we
yeah,
can
we
discuss now.
need to make sure that it's a draft and it's needs to be with staff input. There's a lot of work needs to be done before we adopt a final. So, but we hope to do that in March.
So just as an introduction, I guess I just want to make sure people that are listening understand. We, as a board, work together with Todd on creating some district goals. These goals are in a draft form. Tonight, we're just gonna vote on drafting these in a draft form because we need to get feedback from our district staff across the board around these goals, and that may alter the goals that are presently in place right now
Correct.
before we ultimately vote, possibly at our next meeting, to finalize these goals.
Yeah,
Because they will affect all of our staff,
They will
and
affect
all of
us.
our administration.
yeah. They're the ones that have to carry it. Well, Todd carries it out with the staff.
So the plan is to meet with staff, with administration, and then be able to have more of a discussion about these goals and their purpose, and also get feedback.
Agreed.
Any more? All right, bill trackers on the website. Yeah, Tico mentioned that up, but anyway, I got a website a link from Matt. And I sent it to Todd, and he's already got it on the website. So we encourage our staff, our community, students, whoever, to go on there on the school website, and you can go down and find the link, press it, and it'll take you right to the bill tracker, the CASB one, not the LRC, the CASB bill tracker. And the importance of the bill tracker is it only does the bills that are introduced in the legislature for education. So, I mean, there's been hundreds and hundreds of bills introduced, but this kind of narrows it down to just the ones that influence our district. So they're kind of prioritized.
And if I could add to that just a little bit, we were able also to get the permission from the Rural Alliance
Oh, awesome. I was
to
gonna ask you
add
about
their
that.
bill tracker as well.
Cool.
So under the board page of the website, we have two bill trackers, one from the Colorado Association of School Boards, which you were able to secure for us.
Yeah,
And then also from the Rural Alliance, which is an organization designed just to support rural school districts. So it could give us more than one view at the same
cool.
bill.
All right, that's what we need. Okay, I think you already brought this up, community meeting regarding recruitment and retention. You already have that on March 2nd and 3rd, is
Yeah.
that?
So on March 2nd, that'd be a meeting then in the cafeteria, which will invite just all community members to. So this is an opportunity for me to do that, and I'll make sure to get something on the website about it this week and find a way to get something out to parents as well about it this week. And then the one on March 3rd, I want to talk with the town about using the community center and possibly doing a light catering for that one also at a different time to try to see if we can get two different groups of community involved. Because, you know, our number one fiscal issue as a school district is the retention and recruitment of educators. And so if we can get this in front of our community, I think that would go a long way to helping us solve this vexing problem.
Cool. Okay. Next one is district-wide professional development calendar and board responsibility.
So I can speak to that one a little bit. We're in the process of, we're having a culture shift as a school district for many years. It's my understanding that professional development calendars have been the primary responsibility of the school leader themselves. And so what as one of the things I heard, when I joined the school district 2 years ago was that we wanted to see a far more united school district and to see really professional development that goes from pre-K all the way through 12th grade. And so what we've done is we're developing a district-wide professional development schedule for the 21 days that staff has on the calendar for professional development. And so that will still include time that is still building specific, but it'll also include time that's district specific. In particular, some of the initiatives we see in our strategic plan, like the development of being a trauma-informed school district, the development of project-based learning is our primary instructional strategy. Finding time that's consistent, reliable, and builds a thread of professional development throughout the school year. So to get this launched, we'll be sharing it with the school leaders this week to give them first opportunity because they have the biggest demand for professional development. And then all the department heads will be getting it second, from safety and security to transportation to nursing to BOCES and so on. They all have access to the district-wide calendar as well as the board. Because I heard from the board that the board owns governance. Governance is the strategic plan. And so now the board will have access to secure professional development time for all staff through the district-wide professional development schedule. And the BOCES, as well as the department heads, as well as the school leaders, meet on the fourth Tuesday of each month. And that's when we'll do our final, for lack of a better word, negotiating on the professional development schedule. Because unfortunately, there's always going to be more professional development that everyone wants to see happen or is required to see happen by statute than there is time. And one of the things that is challenging about this is we still want to honor as much time as possible, time for teachers to have to recover from the week and to do lesson planning for upcoming weeks as well. So not only is there a demand for time for professional development, there's also a demand for time for recovery and lesson development as well. As a as a school district that's has school 4 days a week, that means that we have really long days. And those long days don't allow for a lot of lesson development. And so that's what we've used some of this professional development time for also. So we also have to find a way to honor that so that we can build something that really meets the needs of the school district. So I'm glad to say that that's coming to fruition. And it's going to be a bumpy road. It's a challenging task to build in this level of alignment. But it's one that's really important for the school district. I think we'll see an improvement in academic and social emotional outcomes for our students as a result of a district-wide professional development schedule.
Is there anything that the board can do to, I do understand all of those, I appreciate all of those demands, and it seems like a insurmountable task, and I don't want anyone on the staff to feel like are just asking for this to flex our muscles in any sort of way. But we are really looking at ways to have a collaboration and like have singular focus around some of these goals that we have outlined in the strategic plan. But we are also truly, truly looking for feedback too. And so if there's anything we can do to accommodate or anything, please don't hesitate to ask, because I want it to be informative and real for everyone in the room, and meaningful.
Yeah.
Because I feel like professional development kind of gets a short shrift, and people don't feel like they feel like it is an add-on and it's not.
Todd, we should get feedback from administrators as well. I mean, it should be all staff as it relates to these goals, right?
Mhm.
Mhm.
We expect to get it from everybody.
Can I ask you a question? That's been in Ed's report, I think since the beginning, but his last one was building in 2 more beginning of year staff days and compensating the teachers for it. I know he's really crunched. Has that ever been on the table? Are you thinking about it? Or I don't know, is it even something that teachers would, I know they'd be compensated for it, but think about their time.
So just 2 things. Before if you don't mind, I just want to, for the professional development, district-wide professional development schedule, I'm hoping that I expect that we have it fully operational by the time we start school next semester. But we're going to try to get it operational this semester to work out the bugs and the challenges and to experience the tensions along the way, so that when we go into next school year, hopefully we'll have that articulated out in a good part. Come August for the year, we'll have a really good understanding.
Practice.
Right, so, but that was one of the major stressors for Mr. Rittner, was the lack of professional development time with his staff at the beginning of the year, because he really only had 3 days to really work with them. And we typically reserve the first 2 days historically for new staff. So there's a real interest in having it have 5 days for all staff instead of just 3. This has not been addressed with staff yet. And really the first hurdle is financial. So I wanted to first clear the hurdle of, is this even a possibility with the budget before I even take it a step further? But it is something that would be good for us to get settled in, so that when students show up, that everything feels really smooth and ready for them, and staff feels comfortable because they've had the requisite time to put everything in order that they want. But at this point, I just wanted to first get an understanding of budget before I even approach the subject with staff. Because if it's not a possibility with the budget, then I didn't want to get people upset about something that just couldn't be.
Yeah.
Either get
That
their
makes
hopes
sense.
up or to frustrate them.
Yeah.
I didn't want either outcome.
It's hard, because I know they have 3 days, but they have so many meetings, they don't have a lot of time in their classrooms. And I know, especially for elementary, it takes sometimes days. We
Well-
have to come in the week before to set up our classroom.
Well, that's a
That's a lot
total,
of time.
exactly, that's a total mixed bag, because some are already putting in those extra days.
Yeah.
And this could allow them to be compensated for
Yeah,
those days.
Yeah.
Because we do know that compensation is our top fiscal issue.
Yeah, okay, I had to ask. All right, excuse me, the BOCES bylaws, Article 4 or 5, Section 1, membership appointment alternative. We kind of hit it a little bit in our work session, but Kay, did you have anything else? I know you sent us out the policy.
Yeah, it is within the BOCES policies that a alternate can and ought to be appointed. So I think if we're comfortable all doing that, I think if someone would like to do that, I think it would be a good idea. As I mentioned earlier, sometimes there is an issue with quorum And so this would kind of keep those BOCES meetings moving forward.
And
So,
you said they can join by Zoom?
correct,
Okay.
And that they will have voting rights when they attend.
correct. Yes, they would be a alternative voting.
So in my purview, I would not be comfortable only because I feel like I'm still getting up to speed and learning some of the ins and the outs of how school districts and BOCES work together and what those services are and the mandates and requirements or expectations. I would bow out just because of my lack of experience there at this stage. But would ask that someone who, I know you're not gonna be here long-term, but someone who has some sort of educational experience or background, raise their hand for an alternate, only because you're gonna get that.
I'm the only
Wow.
one.
You're the one.
Just say it.
I just got
I
your
mean,
line.
yeah, don't hint at it.
It could be Cam.
I was gonna say,
It could be
actually, Katie
Pam.
goes off too. So.
Right.
Well,
And
already
you've been
there.
there, so it's not just you, because
Yeah,
Pam, because Tim has been there for
for
years. Either one of you would be a better choice than me, that's all I'm saying. Plus, I have hours and hours and hours of policy work
I
now
know,
to
I
do.
do,
So I am
you've
not
taken on a
volunteer
big-
for
No,
nothing.
you've taken on a big chore,
Yeah.
you've taken on a huge chore.
Yeah. So, okay, I'll just be an alternate.
Okay.
So,
I don't know
so if
if
I'm
we-
an alternate, does that mean you'll let me know if you're not gonna be there? Is that
Correct.
how that's gonna work?
Yes,
And they feed you.
yes, they do.
Oh, boy.
Not if you're on Zoom, there's
Yeah.
no delivery
Yeah, right,
action or
yeah. I was just gonna say,
anything.
that's an amazing job on Zoom.
DoorDash.
Although you could have,
Uber.
I don't know, let me review the policy. Let's circle back and put it as an, since it's, I don't believe it's an action
It
item.
isn't, we'll have to do that.
So let's
next
go
time.
back. Yeah, we'll come back and put it on as an action
Okay, so
item.
that's future.
Next
Yeah,
meeting.
because I will be at this forthcoming meeting on Wednesday, so there's no immediate concern. And so. Thank you.
I can be alternate to the alternate.
Okay.
I'm not raising my hand for nothing.
All right, and then we've got G,
So much
the
victory.
policy review schedule.
Okay, so that's what we were just
That's your
talking
job.
about. Do you want me to take this one?
Yes, go ahead, since you're the one that made this schedule.
Okay, so as some may or may not be aware, at the beginning of, I believe it was the beginning of the school year, and sorry if my specific timing is off, we adapted, we made, the board made a move to adopt all of CASB's core policies to bring all of our policy into compliance with state. In doing so, we overwrote some of the previous policy work that we had done, or that years and years historically, I'm sure Tim could tell us how many historical years that boards had been working on over periods of time. But we did elect to adopt a policy just for the sake of being fully compliant. So now the exercise is to go back to the old, compare to the new, and reincorporate those items that were important and very specific to our district alone by that review. It will take us until the end of next school year, so May of 2024, to get through the several policies that we have. I don't even know the number, but I'm sure it's a few hundred. It's a lot. And so we will redline the old versus the new, look at those changes, have, review them each together or all together at each board meeting. There will be a set section of policy. This would be great as far as like DAC wanting to know what policy we were reviewing. So there'll be a schedule of that. And then, we will vote as to whether or not we adopt those changes in policies or have conversation and table. At the end of this process, we will have a fully vetted policy book. I do believe we've agreed on the fact that certain policies we're gonna push forward. For instance, policy IG, it sounds like is gonna come to light. We also have a policy this evening that we're looking at. And in doing so, it'll kind of, we'll have to navigate what moves around in our schedule. At the end of those, that process, we can then elect as a board to decide if we want to continue to then start over again and review, or if we review as necessary.
And the
So it's a
blue are
big
the
change.
ones, the capacity are the ones we've already adopted.
No, those are the ones we chose, that we did not have adopted before. So
Okay.
they are likely to be stricken. They're not inclusive now. I don't know that we have to formally strike them. Todd, that would be a question for you.
We didn't
We
adopt them.
We didn't adopt them. Okay, so they're in there because they were inclusive, but we're just gonna ignore those. Doesn't matter. And most of them don't apply to our district anyway.
Okay.
So,
And in this schedule are Mancos specific policies that were written, historical policies that were written to or amended, or there was amending to them to satisfy
like grants and so forth.
grants and such.
Yeah, so there are a couple I know that we had agreed to, and I still need to do that research to see if they're there. They're on my radar to come up with for March, to make sure that if they're not, they get placed immediately.
Yeah, I feel like that's a little bit of an Easter egg hunt, right? Like, I feel like we don't know what we don't know. And so I wonder if there's, you know what I'm saying? Like, I wonder if there is a call out that you can do to more veteran staff members who could have possibly, I know, it's crazy, but like Janet might be a great, person. I know one was brought to me by, oh gosh, I can't remember. Anyway, was brought to my attention in that regard. So it's just something, I don't know how to kind of recreate some of that, but maybe start with building, yeah.
I have
building
found
administrators.
historically that Chrissy is very on top of those.
Yes.
So my intention was to go to her.
Yeah.
And build from her as well, because I know she's mindful of a handful that she was wanted to make sure got
Yes.
back in there.
That does make sense because probably they were built so that we could get money.
Yeah, so I will start with Chrissy.
Yeah.
And again, the process is that we're gonna do a red line, and then I'm utilizing Mr. Hunter's vast historical knowledge to do the work with me. I can't do it all.
There.
Like, I'm good on the, in terms of the administrative piece and the detail work, but Tim's got the knowledge. So the two of us together on the backside are doing that work, just to be clear, and then we're bringing it monthly it will be part of the board packet. You all will be responsible to read and look at those items that are highlighted, and then either adopt or discuss or strike or whatever we decide to do. So it becomes a normal agenda discussion item going forward.
Oh.
As normal as it gets.
Don't remove it. It'll be there until at least May of 2024.
That's it. Okay, so let me, for clarification, so all of these policies here were in the old book or the new one?
This is the new. So I've got to go compare each month,
Right?
pull
To
out the
the
old.
old, okay.
Correct.
Right,
Okay. Got it.
that's what we just bought.
Yes, okay.
And if there is a policy, perhaps, that was not in the old,
Uh-huh.
then I will make reference to that, because we will be then just reaffirming,
Right,
simply reaffirming our adoption. We've already adopted, we're
right,
just reaffirming.
right. Okay. Wow. Okay, we're down to strategic plan, objective 4A. So we're gonna be talking about 4A, adopting or accepting 1B and 3B. So let's talk about 4A first. And that's the one that we talked about with Bobby on last week.
That was in our work session.
Yeah. And, let's see. Okay, 4A was teachers and students will utilize student achievement or assessment, data to develop and implement individualized student learning plans. Mancos students will demonstrate mastery or positive longitudinal growth in reading and math by the end of third grade, and I put on to 10th, it looked like we'd already amended this, but, and all teachers will encourage an interest and love of reading throughout a student's academic career.
And we mostly talk
So-
about growth versus achievement
Yeah.
in those
In
definitions.
her report,
Yes,
yeah, and she also wanted to, she brought it forth as approaching standards.
yes, it is approaching standard.
Yeah. There it is,
And achievement is being at grade level,
yeah,
and growth is where you are and how much you're gaining over the course of a year,
yeah, and she
not
gave you
necessarily
that,
related to being at grade level, because some kids aren't making that and can't make that, but growth, we can have growth.
Yeah.
Even if we don't have maximum achievement.
well, you can have growth, but your maximum achievement is grade level.
It's great,
So
right,
that's-
exactly,
Yeah, so a student could have growth and still not be at grade level,
right,
but,
but all of our students can have growth.
yeah,
Not all of our students may have
At
full
grade
achievement
level.
at grade level.
yeah. And this, and she did include the matrix from NWEA on this report too.
Yeah, it's there. So I did meet with Adion, and we put together what we talked about. We saw the growth chart, and the growth chart had the number of students. Out of that number of students, how many met their growth projection, and then the number of students that did not meet that growth projection. And then we just added how many kids were really beyond the grade level. Just so as a board, we could see that population, just be aware of that population. And then achievement, we talked about a report that's already exists, that's red, green, and yellow, and then she was going to take those and bring it into the same format as the growth chart that we have like in front of us. So again, we should take a look at that and say, does that really meet some of the discussions we just had
Yeah,
about the chart that we're trying to have from year to year. Let's see what she brings forward, but we left the meeting pretty clear about, and she felt like, yeah, we can do that. So at next meeting, she was gonna present at the next,
mhm,
she was gonna present what that might look like for us to take a look at.
okay. Well, and what we get back from staff on what we talked about earlier too, might play into that as well, so.
There was one of the student growth summary reports that labeled us as Mesa Verde Elementary School instead of Mancos.
She was using that, I
As
thought,
as an example?
right,
Yeah.
Thank you,
but she
okay.
didn't want to put any data, of anybody that's. an
Thank you
officer.
for that, I was just like, okay.
Oops, dang it. Oh, and then she gave you the growth summaries. All right, any other questions about that? I mean, we know this is the one that we just discussed and Adian's working on, and we'll have more to add next month, but any other discussion right now? I think we've pretty much covered it. Okay, so let's go on, board action to accept the objective reports, objective 1B and 3B.
Well, I move that we approve objective 1B and 3B as approaching standard.
And I second that.
Okay, so I know 3B is approaching standard is one as well. Or
Correct.
Yes.
1B, okay. All right, so I have a motion and a second to accept objectives 1B and 3B as approaching standard. Any discussion? All right, Heather, will you call the question, please?
Katie Cahill Wolfie. Aye. Pam Coppinger.
Aye.
Victor Figueroa.
Aye.
Tim Hunter.
Aye.
Emily Hutchinson Brown.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes 5-0. All right, action items.
I'd move that we approve all action items A through F. You consent?
I'll second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second to approve action items A through F. Is there any discussion?
I'd like to just point out that action item E is our first iteration of review of a policy with the addition of just a couple of lines of language.
Okay,
So we're officially off to the races.
all right,
And I didn't even do the work, it was great.
okay. So, any other discussion? Okay, Heather, call the question, please.
Katie Cahill Wolfie. Aye. Pam Coppinger.
Aye.
Victor Figueroa.
Aye.
Tim Hunter.
Aye.
Emily Hutchinson Brown.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes 5-0. I have this, was this from last time?
No,
Or is this a new time? A resolution in support of
Victor's had to do that.
Oh, okay. Victor, did you the one that gave me the resolution for Senate Bill?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, that was just information for the board. It wasn't for us to act. That resolution is just something that CASB put out there for us to consider, for local boards to consider if they wanted to have an action and state that they support this bill, that this Senate Bill 23071. So it was just an example of that. It wasn't for us to do anything with it.
All right.
It was not on our
Public
agenda.
participation, I think we already heard from our one board, one audience member twice. Okay, and I've got future agenda items.
Oh, I do have something.
Oh, yeah.
As just as noticing the time change for the board meeting tonight. There's concerns about if that's official, will that be changed on the website? Is that just tonight or is that in the future? And that's me wearing Tigo hat. And then as me wearing dad hat, just as a heads up, we're talking about, correct me if I'm wrong, Todd, district improvement process next week. So if there is any kind of information around that, that you would want us to really look at or make recommendations about, there's one subject for sure that we could get pre-information, and then we'll get information from Mr. Archer.
It's that, it may be, Ms. Giles and Mr.
And we're not doing MTSS.
It is
Because we
MTSS, that is the agreement process.
Oh, okay. What's MTSS stand for?
Multi-tiered system of support.
I know, I never can remember that. Okay, for the time, it is gonna be a permanent change. And it will be on the website, and you've already changed it on the agenda and stuff, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I didn't change it on the website for like general time because I wasn't for sure if it was just for this meeting.
Yeah, we just
But now
all
it will
agreed that
be.
we could all meet at 5, and it's a lot easier. I knew that I've already got put in a full day.
We had staggered times, like sometimes we were coming at 5 for a work session and
Work
others
session
at
aside,
6.
regular one at 6, yeah.
And it was very confusing. So work sessions will be at 5, but meetings will always be. board
Work
meetings,
session at 5, meeting at 6.
6.
All right. Future agenda items, more clearly identify what we want the DAC to do. We're gonna have to be talking about that. Having Sherry Wright possibly come in to get our priorities or what is important for our district. Victor reached out that he could organize that with Sherry.
I can, but I think we
That
need
was
to
future
talk
items.
about the
This is just-
priority.
Yeah, this is just future items to
Oh,
talk about.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
And then 3, there is an action item on the, Victor as an alternate for BOCES. And then, the policy review will be, and a
Existing,
standing.
yeah,
a
standing action.
Standing, discussion, right?
No, well, I think action,
Okay,
because we can stop and discuss if
Right.
need be on an action item.
okay. We'll probably just need you to give us the numbers so that we can put that in the agenda.
I believe that Heather will be a great help, as she already has been on this project, because we'll work together to make sure they're in there correctly and provide it all in advance.
Okay,
And if I
Any-
might add one more thing before you
go ahead.
pound the gavel. If we could discuss next month a date for board retreat, it would be really helpful to kind of coordinate that summer calendar. Since that's an important meeting. July's looking a little dodgy for me.
Yeah, it's coming up quick, isn't it?
And Madam President, I have one other thing, just for the good of the group, but it's not for agenda. PCC Southwest Campus has hired their new dean.
Oh, I saw that.
So Dr. Lisa Snyder is the new dean for the Southwest Campus for Pueblo Community College. And we'll be meeting with her on March 10th from 10 to 12 p.m., 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. to get to know her and get her welcomed. And we've exchanged emails with her already and got her welcomed,
Good.
since
I
it
saw that
plays
in
such
the
an
paper,
important
yeah.
role for our district.
Is she the one that basically helps us with everything with our pathways?
Yeah, she's gonna be really important for us with everything. 'Cause-
Okay,
So that I'm looking forward to getting to know her.
all right.
So I just wanted to see if we can put, it's more of a discussion, but it's more information around what our policy is around compassionate leave. Do we have compassionate leave? And the discussion is more, do we have that? And if we do, what is it? And if we don't, can that be part of the discussion with recruit, retain, and compensation? I think that was it, and I think the other
Compassionate leads?
compassionate leave,
Lead. Oh,
like there's a crisis
right.
and people, and so I wanted to understand more what our policy was. And then I just want to understand more, like, right now, if there is a crisis, how do staff really try to get leave to deal with that? So I'm looking more for information and then based on that information, whether that should be part of what's discussed during the compensation committee or the recruitment, retain, and compensate committee.
I'm glad you brought that up, because I had that in one of the reports, I had that same question about, I thought a person had resigned, but maybe not. And so I didn't know what policy, what we were doing with that. So I'm glad you brought that up.
So that really speaks to the first reading of policy GBGH. And that really speaks to using the 60-day leave bank
Okay,
for a staff member that has either an illness or needs to take care of a family member that's ill.
And that's on GH, that's one of the policies that we're gonna talk about.
GBGH.
We adopted
the
it
one
this
that we
evening.
We just
adopted
did
the
the first
first-
reading. First reading was tonight of that policy.
Yeah.
That was
That
GBGH.
was in- that's
It was in your board packet.
I'm really good at looking at the reading stuff, but I didn't see that.
That was
so,
action item E.
Okay,
okay,
okay, so that was
Well,
the
I'm
first
like you,
reading,
though,
the
I
first
didn't know.
reading means
You got
what?
3 readings.
yeah,
Yeah, but this is a good opportunity to review it, to see if there's changes for the second reading.
yeah,
Okay,
Because
all
I
right.
think
The second reading of final approval.
as I consider the idea of compassionate
So
leave,
these have to roll.
maybe it's not, maybe the first reading doesn't fully address some of the things you may have in your mind. So we will have time to look at it next month also.
Okay, and
Okay,
tell
so-
it right now, does that, I mean, is that new to the policy, or is that something we've had in place?
It's a revision of a current policy.
Okay,
The original policy, the current policy, if you will, prior to this potential revision, only speaks to allowing up to 60 days from the leave bank if it's the employee themselves that have a long-term illness. And we're looking to address that for an employee that needs to be a caregiver of a family member that they'll want to turn in this.
So it's exactly what you asked for.
Right, right,
Yeah,
okay,
and it's really just a very minor revision and it's highlighted in yellow. So,
okay.
and I'm hoping I can
I
do
read
something
that.
similar, it may be red versus yellow, but we'll try.
Okay, so with that will be an action item. It'll be the second reading and then we'll discuss.
Okay.
Okay, any other further agenda items? Okay, we stand adjourned.
Okay.